Welcome to Chapter 5 of the Win 10 class. The objectives in this chapter: we're going to describe local user accounts and groups. We're going to create, manage user accounts. We're going to manage user profiles. We're also going to configure advanced authentication methods, describe Windows 10 integration with networks. And let's start out with user accounts. So user accounts required for individuals to log in onto Windows 10 and use resources that are on the computer. Now we can have an account without a password, so it is still technically logging in, it's just not secure access. It has attributes that describe the user and control the access. So, local user account is a user account created in Windows 10 and it exists only on the local computer. A Microsoft account is stored online by Microsoft and can be applied to multiple Windows 10 devices. There's advantages of using a Microsoft account. It's a single set of credentials across devices, password reset capability, synchronization of some profile information. You've got integration with family settings and integration with other Microsoft applications. User accounts are stored in the security accounts manager database. Within the same database, each user account is assigned a unique security identifier. So SID is security ID. Hang on, let me step back a second. Now this advantages of using your Microsoft account. If you do not have access to the internet, this could be an issue because it's verified on their database and you'll have to have network access to get there. Win 10 supports several sign-in methods. We can use the sign-in screen, secure sign-in, fast user switching, automatic sign-in, and assigned access. Now, the Windows sign-in screen, for computers not joined to a domain, there's a GUI screen that displays each local user represented by an icon and a name. It's a little circle down on the left side of the screen. Secure sign-in increases security on your computer by forcing you to press Control-Alt-Delete before logging on. It protects your computer from viruses and spyware that may attempt to steal your password. It's enabled on the Advanced tab of your Advanced User Accounts applet. A fast user switching, it allows multiple users to have applications running in the background at the same time. Only one user can be actively using the computer at any given time. And an important feature in environments where multiple users share the same computer. You don't have to necessarily shut down what you're doing. You can step away from it and let somebody else take over. And while they're using it, you're locked out, but your application's still running. Now, it's commonly desired in lab environments and for reception computers, to where you never know who's going to be logging in at any given time. Now, automatic sign-in, sometimes it's desirable for the computer to automatically log on as a specific user each time that it's started up. Now, it's appropriate for libraries and other public locations. It could be every time somebody logs on, they're logging on as a guest, and they've got that guest account logged on. It could be like in our, well, I don't want to say in our library or whatever. Most of the stuff we've got at the college, you would have to sign in as your own account. But if it was a public location and you didn't have a specific user account, they could set it up as a guest that way. Automatic sign-in is configured on the Users tab of the Users Account applet. Now you hold down the Shift key during the boot process and it stops automatic sign-in from occurring. Signed access. And it's an advanced sign-in option for configuring Windows 10 as a kiosk. When you enable assigned access, you select a local user account and a Windows Store app. The selected user account is limited to using that one app when signed in. So here we've got how we set up assigned access. We've got naming conventions, and throughout IT, or computers as a whole, we've got specific naming conventions when it comes to naming objects, computers, users. Well, there's a standard process for creating names on a network or a standalone computer. Even small networks benefit from resources with meaningful names so that you know what that resource is at a glance, instead of just a combination of arbitrary letters and numbers. Some common naming conventions: first name and last initial, first initial and last name. Restrictions imposed by Windows 10 is usernames must be unique. You can't have multiple users with the same name. Usernames must be 20 characters or less. Usernames are not case sensitive, and usernames cannot contain special or invalid characters in the name itself. A couple there on me. So we've got some default user accounts. First one we'll start out with is the most powerful of all of them, is the administrator. You've got unlimited access and unrestricted privileges to every aspect of that Windows system. It's not visible on the sign-in screen as an option. It has a blank password by default. The administrator account cannot be deleted. Now, you can have multiple users as administrators, but you cannot make all of the administrators go away. There always has to be an administrator account. You cannot lock out an administrator due to incorrect login attempts. The administrator cannot be removed from the local administrators group or the default administrator account. You can disable an administrator account, or you can rename it, but you can't make it go away. Excuse me. We're disabled by default in Win10, automatically enabled when you enter safe mode, and password is blank by default. Now, the guest account is another that is built in. It's one of the least privileges. You can't do much with it, but you can access the system. It has extremely limited access to resources and computer activities. It's intended for people that show up every now and then and don't have to get to a lot of resources. Low security users. You can't delete the guest account. Now you can delete. Now you can't delete the overall guest account. It can't be locked out. You can't say, I don't want guests on this machine and we're just going to get rid of it. Now, it's disabled by default. You'd have to enable it. It has a blank password by default. It can be renamed, and it's a member of the guest group by default. And it's a member of the everyone group by default as well. Now, the initial account, the user creates an initial account during installation. They ask you, who's going to use this computer? And we'll create that initial account. And that's on the install. That account that's created on the install is given by default administrative privileges. It's got administrative privileges, but it's not the same account as the administrator's account. Okay. That initial account is available on the sign-on screen. The admin is not. It doesn't have a blank password by default, but you can force it to create one. It can be deleted. It can be locked out due to incorrect login attempts, and you can remove them from the administrators group. If you go and log into administrators, you can say, all right, that person is not an administrator anymore. So we got a default account. It's a new account in Windows 10. It's disabled and it does not apply on the Windows sign-in screen. Should not be modified in any way. And it's not documented or managed by Windows 10. Now we've got some default groups. The groups they're used to simplify the process of assigning security rights and permissions. And they help us say that I've got 5 people that should have access to the same resources. I don't want any of them to be able to modify certain things. I'll create a group and assign those members to that group. So members of the group have access to all the resources that the group has been given permission to access. Now Windows 10 has some built-in groups: access control assistance operators, administrators, backup operators, cryptographic operators, distributed COM users, event log readers, guests, Hyper-V administrators, IIS users, network configuration operators, performance log users, performance monitor users, and power users. We've also got remote desktop users, remote management users, replicator, and system managed accounts group. We've also got general users. It was a default that we talked about. Now, when you're creating and managing user accounts, you can do it from the settings, you can do it from control panel, you can do it from local users and groups. There's an MMC snap-in. Now, we've got a standard user account. It derives its privileges from being a member of the local users group. Now, it can't compromise the security or stability of Windows 10 with that account. The administrator's account, it derives its privileges from being a member of the administrators group. It has complete access to the entire system. Most actions that are triggered by an administrator don't result in a prompt from a user account control. Now, changes are triggered by software. They result in a prompt from the user account control. It ensures changes are not made by malicious software. Changes made from the account settings, you can manage your own user account and create additional user accounts. If you go into your account, you can switch authentication between a local account or your Microsoft account. We've got a wizard for adding new accounts, and it starts by asking, how will the user sign in? We've got an applet in the control panel. It's a user accounts applet. It was the preferred interface for user management in Win 7. It's still available in 10, but it doesn't have as much functionality. You can't create a new user account in that user accounts applet. Now, there's some administrative options with a shield beside them, and they're restricted to the administrative groups. And you'll see it. It's a little red shield. That's not looking red here. It's more orangey and blue. So those are administrative things that other users don't have access to them. And we'll see different things along the way that they're identified as admin only. Now, local users and groups, MMC snap-in, it allows you to create and manage both user accounts and groups. General user tasks that you can perform are create a new user, delete a user, rename a user, and set a user password. Other user options can be configured in the properties of the user account itself. But that MMC snap-in's got a lot of power to it. So here we go, and we're going through this little interface, and we can add more details about Bob, change the password, say the password never expires. There's things we can go modify in there. So in the local users and groups MMC snap-in, it's a member of a tab. It lists groups of which the user account is a member. So you could see which, let me back up. Users are not restricted to just one group. So I could be a member of multiple groups. Now there's a rule that comes into play when it comes to being a member of multiple groups. And if I'm a member of a group with very restricted rights and a member of a group with almost administrative rights of certain resources, which one overrides? If I've been allowed access via my group that I'm a member of, that overrides. Now there's a profile tab. It's often used in corporate environments for domain level accounts. Profile tab specifies the location of the profile for this user. Now keep in mind, it said domain level accounts. So that's something that information's potentially going to go across a domain. Local users and groups MMC snap-in. Here we go. We could click on any one of these to see what's going on, or remove that Bob from that member of. So I can add a group. I click add. It would display the optional groups that I can add Bob as a member of, and go right on down the line there. Local users and group MMC snap-in. Got a login script box. It defines a script that is run each time during sign-in. You've got a home folder, and that's that user where their default location for saving files is. Everybody's got their own user account folder, and in that user account folder, they have their My Documents, their video, the things that are unique to them. Nobody else has rights and permissions to those resources, so they are unique to the user. Now, I shouldn't say nobody. The administrators do, but anybody with any other standard rights has no access to them. When you view the properties of a group, there's only a single tab. It provides a description of the group and a list of group members. You can add and remove users from the group there. Now here it is, one tab. We can add, and this is for the group itself. I can add members to it. If I want to manage a user profile is a collection of desktop and environment configurations for a specific user or group of users. Let's say I don't want somebody to be able to modify their desktop. I can define what it is, what they can and can't change. Profile folders and information like app data, application data, contacts, cookies, desktop, documents, downloads, folders, links, local settings, music, My Documents, NetHood, OneDrive, pictures, PrintHood, recent, saved games, searches. It goes on. So all this information is in their profile. Now the default profile, when the user profiles are created, 110 copies the default user profile to create a profile for that new user. That folder gets created and everything in there gets defined. Now, the new user on startup gets administrative privileges, designated local user. Go right on down the line with those. There are some mandatory profiles that we can set up. You can't modify a mandatory profile. Users can make changes to their desktop settings while they're logged on, but those things don't get saved. Most mandatory profiles are implemented as roaming user profiles. And what that means is you can go log into, you're on a domain, you can go log into multiple computers. You don't want to go have users logging into a computer that someone else traditionally uses, make changes to it, and those changes persist or stick. So what we can allow them to do is you go log in, personalize it. When you're out, it goes back to that persistent state that it was set at before. You can have roaming profiles where it's stored on a network location rather than on a local hard drive. It moves with you from one machine to another so that when you log in, it recognizes the way you should be set up, and a roaming profile is copied to the local computer every time you sign into it. We've got folder redirection allows you to specify a network location for specific profile folders as an alternative to storing the data on the local client. So folders are redirected rather than copied. It's like a little pointer. You can combine folder redirection with roaming profiles to mitigate the shortcomings of roaming profiles. Pop through here. Let's get into the Start menu. Start menu is a collection of different folders and shortcuts to applications. In Windows 10, you cannot manually create folders or shortcuts in the Start menu. It means adding and removing programs from the Start menu by right-clicking the program and pinning those programs to the Start menu. You can do that in Windows 10, but you got to go through the interface itself. In Windows 10 Enterprise and Education, they use group policy to customize the Start screen. Now, we've got Imaging and Configuration Designer. It can be used to customize the Start menu. Now, we've got different authentication methods that are in Win 10, and we talked about them, it's been a couple of chapters ago. We've got Picture Password, PIN, Windows Hello, Microsoft Passport, and Smart Cards. Once configured, Picture Password authentication requires you to perform gestures on a picture that you selected. Now, to configure it, you select a picture and provide gestures to or on that picture. It's unique for each computer device. Malware cannot capture or use this information. Use a PIN. PIN's unique authentication instead of using username or password. Similar benefits to the picture password. It's unique to a specific computer. And we've got Windows Hello. Windows Hello, that's our biometric authentication in Windows now. It's been around for a long time in Microsoft OSs, and it's the latest level of support for biometric authentication. You can use fingerprints, facial recognition, iris scanning. Windows Hello does not store a picture of your fingerprint, face, or iris. It stores information about the unique pattern that your biometric information provides. So it ensures that data from Windows Hello cannot be used to recreate your biometric information. And Microsoft Passport, it's the new authentication system in Windows 10 that leverages Windows Hello to recreate or to avoid credential reuse in multiple locations. Each identity provider that supports Microsoft Password identifies you by using a unique certificate with a public key and a private key. If your computer has a Trusted Platform Model, TPM, then the private keys are stored and secured by software. And we can use smart cards. And smart cards, we use smart cards now. Most people don't realize what we're talking about when we say smart cards. Now, in the not so recent past, you may have heard where credit card companies were migrating from the cards with a magnetic strip on the back to a card with a chip on it. So is that a chipped card? You'll see that. Or we don't accept a chipped card, you need to swipe. So they're going from in many cases, a combination of a chip and a swipe, or jumping just from the swipe to the chip. That chip, that little chip that's in the card itself, that makes that a smart card, because that chip, that little Atmel chip, has all the data on it to identify you as the user or you as your account. Authentication information, there's a ton of information on there. So we can have a smart card much like that, with that little chip. You'd insert it, and it'd be required to have a smart card reader on the computer. Okay. So there's such a thing as a virtual smart card. It stores the certificate in the TPM of the computer instead of on the physical smart card. Users got a PIN that they enter, and then they can use their virtual smart card. It works like a smart card that is permanently attached to the computer. Now, when it comes to network integration, user login and authorization is very different in a networked environment. We've got two different types of networks: peer-to-peer and domain-based. In peer-to-peer networks, they consist of multiple Windows computers that share information. No computer on the network serves as a central authoritative source of user information. So it's just like a group of people that came together, but there is no leader in the group. No one person knows everything, or may know more than all the rest. They're all just individuals in a group. Each computer maintains a separate list of users and groups in its own SAM database. It's most commonly implemented in homes and very small offices. Windows 10 has a limit of 20 connections in a peer-to-peer environment. So here's a peer-to-peer environment, and we've got this main bus, and everybody just connects to it as a visual. And you can connect up to 20, check in, check out. Once you have, say you've connected and you've talked and recognized others, you would store that SAM data on your machine. They would know that you've been there, but the only way that they know you're currently logged in or currently connected is to reach out, talk to you. Hey, are you still here? Peer-to-peer networks, they're used to share printers or access different things that may need to be shared. You need to log on as a user that exists on the remote computer. They've got pass-through authentication. It's the simplest authentication for users. A remote computer has a user account with the exact same name and password as the local machine. Windows Hello, PIN, picture password, Microsoft account stuff, it doesn't work with the pass-through authentication. There's no automated mechanism to synchronize user accounts and passwords between computers. Everybody's separate and distinct of one another. But we're talking about a domain-based network. User accounts for domain-based networks, they're easier to manage. You've got a domain controller, and it's responsible for keeping track of the user accounts and computer accounts. They know who's part of the group, their name, unique identifiers. There's a great deal of information they keep track of about the group, if you will. All right. They can share user accounts on the domain controller. User accounts only need to be created once. They're on the domain controller. There's no concerns about synchronizing anything because it's all stored on the domain controller. So we've got that same connectivity, but we've got that central domain controller with Active Directory on it that keeps track of everything about the network. To participate in a domain, when 10 computers are joined to the domain admins group becomes a member of the local admin group, and that allows centralized administration by the domain administrators. Domain users group becomes a member of the local users group, and that allows all users in the domain to sign in to Windows 10. Now there's cached credentials, and when you use Windows 10 to sign into a domain, your authentication credentials are automatically cached in Windows 10, meaning they're saved. Now, it's important for mobile computers that are not always connected to the domain. After the credentials are cached locally, you can log into that computer using a domain user account, even when the domain cannot be contacted. So when you log in, you've made that connection to the domain controller. That data that recognizes you comes down and it's stored or cached on the local machine. So that should that connection to the domain controller get severed, your network's down, you can still log into the local machine. User accounts are required for users to sign into Windows 10 and use computer resources. Windows 10 sign-in security can be enhanced by enabling secure sign-in. A fast user switching allows multiple users to be logged onto a computer at the same time. 3 default accounts are created upon installation of Windows 10. You can't get rid of these accounts. They're created, and we can't make them go away. The administrator account, the guest account, and the initial user account. Now, groups help us to simplify management by organizing users. Users can be created from settings, control panel, or the users and groups MMC snap-in. User profiles store user-specific settings, and you can't modify profiles to make them mandatory for roaming. You can modify the start menu by using an XML file defined in group policy. And Windows 10 includes advanced authentication methods to increase security by tying authentication to a specific device. In a peer-to-peer network, each computer authenticates users using the local SAM database. In a domain-based network, user authentication is controlled centrally by a domain controller. So I'll see you in Chapter 6, and let's keep doing what we're doing.